all of the research shows time and time again that two things. One, staff want to feel it's not just about money for them. They want to feel invested in. They want to feel that they're part of something, part of the solution. And number two, that the more that we empower our teams with confidence, which you can only get through education, the better they become at their jobs.
Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're here today with Crystal Hamilton, the CEO of Knowbie. Crystal, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. So first things first, can you just tell people, we'll get more into it, but high level, can you tell people what is Knowbie?
So Knowbie is a educational platform that trains restaurant and liquor retail staff on the fundamentals of how to sell and talk about alcohol. Because it's such an important part of the business, I wanted to build something that actually would resonate with the employees of today. So we're an app-based platform that really gamifies and provides a turnkey solution for businesses to use instead of the PDFs and other things we've been doing for decades. We're actually moving to technology to put training on the go.
I love that. And I would like to understand how people got into this space. So I know you have quite an extensive, background in hospitality, but from server to sommelier to wine sales to education. But love to hear from you. What originally got you into the hospitality space, and love to understand your kind of trajectory to the idea or the inception of Knowbie.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's kind of the basic answer, and then there's the real answer. And the real answer is that the hospitality industry really provides a space for anybody to enter into. And that's the thing I love about it, is that, we welcome people of all genders, all backgrounds, all everything, all economic status to come into the industry, and we provide a place for them. So for me, I joined the industry because I really didn't have a lot of other options. I grew up very poor and didn't have the opportunity to go to post-secondary school. And so I got a job in a restaurant. And, being a go-getter, I just did really, really well at it. And I loved it and fell in love with really the opportunity that it gave me to meet people and really advance my own career. And so through just kind of going from job to job to job, I ended up falling in love with the world of wine and putting myself through school and becoming a sommelier and getting a diploma in wine studies. And that was really where my career moved from being just a server or a manager to really falling in love with educating people and training people. Because I found that was what worked for me. Like I knew what it felt like to not be trained. Yeah. And then I knew what it felt like when I trained myself. And so I fell in love with training people. And so I started, different wine schools and things at the restaurants that I worked at. And that was really what guided my experience and my passion for education and training.
That's really cool. And so from that kind of experience of, living that, what was kind of the turning point where you're like, I want to build an app, from idea and I like educating to then it's time to build something specific?
Yeah. So I think it was from living the experience of seeing what training and education can do for a business, for a person, for an employee, and for the customer. So like I mentioned, I was a sommelier. So I created wine education programs at the restaurants that I worked at. And I experienced firsthand what it was like training people. So, you schedule everybody to come in, you've got the wine rep coming in, or you're doing the training, you get the samples, and then only half the people show up. Because, half of them are actors or half are in school or whatever it may be. And that's challenging and frustrating. And then you have the turnover rate, right? So you've got, everybody's moving around in our industry, or it's seasonal. You do your training that you've paid for and you've brought people in for. And then 3 months later, those people leave and you've got to do it all over again. And so I experienced that. But later, when I became a wine agent, I watched my friends who were restaurant managers and owners go through the exact same thing. And I remember a moment I was doing a training at the Joey's Restaurant Group, which is a really popular restaurant group here in Canada, and they've moved into the States too. And, similar story. I went in to train them about Catena Alta Chardonnay, which is a really beautiful Chardonnay. And half the people showed up. So only half the people were there. And then of the people that showed up, half of them thought that there was peaches inside of the wine. Half of them didn't know what oak was. Like there was all this varying degree of really understanding. And so I would have to like dumb down my training to meet everybody at the very beginning and train from there. So I wasn't really training about Catena Alta anymore. I was training about like, what is Chardonnay? And it's Vitis vinifera grapes, not the grapes in a grocery store. And, really kind of taking it back to basics. And so in that moment, I thought, why is there not something that a business can use that really standardizes like the level of understanding and training that an employee needs to really just be effective at their job, to have better quality conversations. Like, why are we doing it this way? It doesn't work. And there wasn't anything when I went out and looked for it. And so that's really what inspired me to want to build something. And Angela, let me be clear, I am not a tech person. I'm a wine restaurant person, but I had to become one in order to build a solution that I felt was going to help the people of today. What we've done in the past hasn't worked. So we need to meet our staff where they're at. And that was really what made me move towards an app and not, web-based, because restaurants are deskless. Like the minute the doors open, you're on. There's no sitting down and doing your training. So I was like, it's got to be on the go. It's got to be something that people can do on the bus or whatever on their way to work. And it had to be fun. And it has to kind of take away the snobbery or the fear around alcohol, whether it's, I started in wine because that was my background, but we cover spirits, beer, lots of little micro classes. Like cool. I really wanted to build it to be relevant to the people of today.
It's really neat. I love it when entrepreneurs kind of, do what they do best, which is solving real problems. And, I'd love to, for people kind of imagining the app, could we maybe walk them through, they're maybe listening in, like, what does the experience look like? If I'm working at Joey's or at another restaurant, what does it look like? I get a login, like just kind of walk me through it, just kind of paints a picture of what someone can maybe expect.
Yeah. Well, I'll preface by saying that all of Knowbie, every element of it has been built from a restaurant operator's mindset. Yes. So understanding that they've got so much on their plate. The last thing they need to be figuring out is new technology. And I think that that's what stops people from, moving into this space is it's fearful. They don't have time. Yeah. So I preface in saying that because everything takes minutes. So as an operator, Angelo, if you signed up, your Joey's location, we would hold your hand through the situation of getting your team set up. So it always starts first with building awareness. So we've got to the managers have to talk to staff. We've got posters. We've got different things that go up in the staff area to really raise the awareness that the team understands something is coming. And, this is what it looks like. And they can even download the app themselves and just start playing with it. And then after a week of that, we basically add everybody to the dashboard, as you, Angelo, would be the operator of it. And Knowbie takes over the rest. So we prompt them along. The app is built to encourage your learners and your staff to continue their education. And then it reports back to you the data. So you get to see where people are at, how they're progressing, what chapters they're completing, what their test scores are, all of those types of things. But the idea of Knowbie is not something that I'm not trying to build sommeliers. I'm not trying to build cicerones. I'm really trying to empower the staff of today with knowledge that's going to help them do better at their jobs and sell more and feel more confident. So it's built to be simple. And as a learner, every little chapter takes minutes to go through. So, if you're learning about Chardonnay, that chapter, that whole experience will take you 3.5 minutes to do. It's not meant to frustrate them. Even the tests are not meant to frustrate. There's a little quiz. It's meant to help them to progress through and get to the end result, which is certification.
That's
and
awesome.
Getting something that they can put on their resume and that they can take with them. So, instead of thinking like maybe staff are not going to stick around forever, but when they leave your restaurant, they're going to leave better than they arrived. And that's the goal.
That's awesome. And you quickly touched on a point that I want to dive into a bit more. It was, the education piece and then ultimately helping them sell more. And so I want to kind of double tap on the sell more. Tell me a bit about that side of it. How, because I'm sure you lived it, but how does it help them sell more? I can probably extrapolate, but I'd rather hear from you. So yeah, just walk people listening through. We have a lot of restaurateurs listening in. They're probably okay. Especially the ones that have a strong beverage program are thinking, this sounds interesting. So now I think it's a great time to maybe get into how does education in this case, or using Knowbie, tie to increase in revenue?
Yeah, sales. Good point to kind of tie it back to. So, the idea of education and training, it's really fluffy and sometimes it can feel like not a necessary thing that people don't need, right? It kind of becomes, and even when I was a manager, right, it's the last thing on your list because the bus are called in sick and, the dishwasher's breaking down and, all the other things you have going on. But the data shows and all of the research shows time and time again that two things. One, staff want to feel it's not just about money for them. They want to feel invested in. They want to feel that they're part of something, part of the solution. And number two, that the more that we empower our teams with confidence, which you can only get through education, the better they become at their jobs. And the better they become at their jobs, they're selling more, they're having better conversations because they can actually navigate questions. So we've shown through case study after case study that the direct results of onboarding with Knowbie after 2 to 4 weeks shows a 30% increase in average check through alcohol sales. Yeah. And I think I shared the story with you that time about a server at the Arbutus Club, which is a private members club. And, members come in and they know what they want. And they say, well, I'm going to get the oyster-based Sauvignon Blanc, or I'm going to get whatever it was. It was a Sauvignon Blanc of some sort. And because that server had gone through Knowbie, she had the confidence to actually start to engage in conversation. Instead of just having receiving, taking an order and walking out. Yeah, she actually made a suggestion. So she says, well, did you know we actually have a really great bottle? I know you love drinking Sauvignon Blanc. Have you ever had a Sancerre before? She had no idea what Sancerre was before she took Knowbie. She didn't even know how to say the word. But now she could identify that this regular client or customer liked to drink Sauvignon Blanc, and she felt confident enough to suggest that. The customer said, no, actually, I've never had it. She goes, well, she gives a couple points that she learned in the Knowbie app. It comes from the Loire Valley and blah, blah, blah. The customer said yes. And she was able to create that. It's almost like you create that trust bond with the customer because now you're leading them.
Yes.
So they said yes. They had a bottle of Sancerre, which took that average check from a $30 bottle of oyster-based Sauvignon Blanc to a $100 bottle of Sancerre. That is pure profit.
That's awesome.
And that right there paid for Knowbie for the whole month. Just that one transaction. So, if we look at that as just one example, we have numerous of them. We know that training our staff and empowering them with that language, that knowledge, and making them feel like they're part of the solution and part of the team is a direct result in sales.
That's really cool. You know what you should do? I was just thinking of a cool experiment, but it'd be too hard to actually do because I think if someone wanted to do this, they would just train the whole staff. But imagine if you train like half the servers on Knowbie and half didn't, and then looked at their average check size. It'd be super cool to see
Yeah.
the end results. But this is great, and I'm curious, like ultimately, and I think about it even just from a consumer standpoint. It's like when you're in a restaurant, at least for me, some people they go in, they just want to order the exact same thing. For me, if I'm going out, well, depending on the type of place, but usually if it's the right type of place, I prefer the experience of like, what do you recommend? I want something like this. Guide them a bit, but like, you tell me, like, you guys work here. What do you recommend between this and this? Or I want something with a tequila base. What do you recommend? Not too fruity, whatever. So I'm a fan of like getting that, and it's kind of a bummer when the waiter or waitress doesn't know. So it's like,
Oh gosh.
it just kind of kills the vibe because you're there and you're like, what do you recommend? I like something smoky. I like this. I like that. And it's just like, and then it's the vibe.
Exactly, Angelo. And especially in today's market, everything's more expensive.
Yeah.
Incomes are lower because the discretional money that we use, there are more restaurants than ever. So consumers have more choice. They have less money to spend. And there's a little bit of a third point there is consumers are more educated than they've ever been. So they know what they like. They have a meter. They know when they say, oh, what's the difference between these two Sauvignon Blancs? And you don't know how to answer it, or you lie your way through it, which so many people do. Oh, well, this one's very popular. Everyone likes this one. They can tell. And so what happens is you lose that credibility, and it impacts your restaurant. It impacts the way that people feel about your restaurant. And then it impacts the customer lifetime value. And this is a thing I think I've shared with you before that I don't feel that people talk about, operators, managers, business owners talk about enough with their staff, is the lifetime value of customers.
Yeah.
It is not one transaction. If anybody has been a great server in their life, they understand the power of a regular customer. And that is what makes or breaks businesses a lot of the time. It's a lot easier to keep a regular customer than it is to make new regular customers. It costs way more money in marketing and advertising and all of the things than it is to train our staff how to build regulars. And part of that comes from having this consultative relationship. And you touched on it, diners, when they go out, and I'm the same way, like, I'm coming to your house.
Yeah.
I want to be treated. You are the expert. You know your menu. And even if you don't know wine as good as I know wine, you should know your wine list. Exactly. And so these are the things, or your cocktail list, or when I say, I want a smoky tequila-based cocktail, you should know on your list. But we've lost the investment. Like and we can get into it more, but there's a shift that's happened in the industry, and we've replaced institutional knowledge, or the knowledge of our jobs, with sampling, with I don't knows, with just this kind of like, and making our customers have to be the experts. So that power shift has to come back. And I think that's what really guides great guest experiences.
I love that. And it's funny because I think about, some of the best experiences I've had, it's been the server who knows their stuff. And I'm sure there's a bunch of tricks and tips, but it's funny. One I noticed that works well, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I feel like thinking from a sales lens, it makes sense. So I imagine it translates to servers, but is when they tell you something they don't like, I trust them more, so I find that such a great tactic. Like, oh, what about this? And if they're actually like, it's okay, but to be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a bit small and blah, blah, blah. And it's not our best item. And it's like, all right, I trust you now. Because it's the person who says everything's great. Our menu is awesome. Everything's great. Then I'm like, okay, I don't trust you now.
Oh, the one that gets me is when they say, well, this one's really popular. I'm like,
Exactly. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you there. One thing that came to mind is like, you have, being in the education side of the hospitality business, and now kind of, obviously building Knowbie, you've seen a lot of training. What is it from your point of view that's kind of broken about the way most restaurants train their team?
A lot of the time, it's not the restaurant's fault. It's that the systems are broken. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And when you have right now, it's 84% turnover rate. It's impossible to stay on top of.
Wow.
The only industry that has a higher turnover rate than us is car salesmen.
Wow.
Or salespeople.
Right.
That's the only industry that has a higher turnover rate than us.
Wow.
So it's impossible for them to stay on top of it properly and thoroughly. And I think that this is where, we have to look at, I get asked all the time because I'm in tech, and you probably do too, Angelo, they always want me to talk about tech in the hospitality industry. And I think that tech needs to become this invisible kind of supportive player in hospitality, because I don't ever want technology to replace, the human element. That's why people go out to restaurants. This is part of our DNA and our history and our heritage, is coming together in these social gatherings and having this experience. But using technology to put standards in place and standardize these repetitive tasks. So we look at tech to standardize, like inventory. That's a repetitive task. Training is also a repetitive task, because your bottles are turning over as fast as your staff are these days. You're replacing your tequila almost as fast as your host. I think that standardizing that, so that Knowbie, for instance, Knowbie becomes that trainer that is always there. So even as your manager turns over and your host and your busser and all these people turn over, Knowbie is always there. So you have a standardized learning protocol. Everybody that comes into my restaurant does Knowbie, and then I can trust that every single person knows the difference between a lager and an ale. Period. That's important, and that's peace of mind for an operator. So I think that is where technology lends itself. And the other thing I'll just highlight that I think is broken in and I hate to say that word, but that could be improved, is we need to look at our businesses and the people that are inside of our business, all of our staff, as valuable. And I mean to say that so often businesses and managers, they just want to train the revenue generating employees, like the servers and the bartenders. But if we want to create an environment where people want to stick around, and we want a culture of promoting from within, then we need to train our bussers, our barbacks, our hosts, our dishwashers. Anybody who wants access to education should be able to have it. And that's where technology can come in play, because like something like Knowbie allows everybody to take it. Because maybe that that dishwasher wants to become a busser one day. And then she becomes a busser, and then she wants to become a barback. Well, all of this knowledge is going to help her. And so looking at our business through that lens of let's create a culture of promoting from within. Let's create a culture that everybody deserves to learn and educate, and lean on technology to become that standard for us.
I love that. And you talk a lot about empathy, storytelling in leadership. How do you think about bringing that into, building Knowbie? How do you think about, I guess, putting that in the product?
When I went to school, as I said, to become a sommelier, and you learn lots in school, and, you get your diploma, and, you taste lots of wine. But where I really, where my career took a turn was when I became a wine agent, and I was a sales agent. And the thing that changed my knowledge base and my confidence and my education and everything was spending time with the storytellers of the industry. So spending time with the winemakers, the vineyard directors, going and licking rocks and smelling soil and, having that hands-on experience and hearing those stories, because those stories are what you're able to repeat to your guest. So the importance of storytelling, those are the things that stick. The knowledge of malolactic fermentation, which I never say in Knowbie, so don't worry. But, those words don't stick. But talking about how Chablis was once an oyster bed during the Jurassic period, and that's why the wine tastes the way it does, because there's calcified oyster shells in the soil. That story, when you're selling a bottle of Chablis at the table and you can tell that story to the guests, like, have you ever heard the story of the origin of Chablis, of the region? No, I've never. Tell that story. And the amount of credibility that you build with that guest goes woo, way up. Yeah. Because now you have something to share with them, and they're going to take that story and tell it to somebody else and somebody else and somebody else.
I didn't know that. In my head, I was like, I'm going to tell that story.
I know, exactly.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. So this is what we've put into Knowbie, and this is what we put into even our blogs, and anything that we do within the company is how can we translate these little bits of information to the front line so that they're able to build that confidence and bring it forward to their guest experiences.
That's amazing. And I forgot to ask you this, which is I should ask you this probably at the first 2 minutes of the podcast, not now, but better late than never. How'd you get the name Knowbie?
Great question. So it was a play on the word newbie. So in the industry, we got this newbie starting, blah, blah, blah. They're a newbie. And just when I was playing with the word, the KNOW, like knowledge, you become a Knowbie. And, in all truth, and many of the operators that are on this call can probably, or watching this podcast can relate, when you're trying to choose a name, you got to choose something that isn't taken, number one, and number two, that will stick. So Knowbie was a word that didn't even exist. So I just grabbed it, trademarked it, and boom, off to the races.
It's really cool. I got one. I know we're slowly coming out on time. I got one or two more good ones for you. Yeah. One that comes to mind is advice. What advice would you give? We spoke about turnover, 84%. That's even higher than I thought. I knew it was high. I didn't know it was that high. But what advice would you give to an operator who's constantly, hiring, training, and burning out, their team, and that they have that kind of rotating door? It's a tough problem to solve because it's kind of a general problem happening to everyone, but any wisdom you can share that may help them.
So I think I'm going to answer it in 2 points. One is that change takes time, first of all. So when you decide, that you're going to change something inside of your business, people resist change. And so, you need to continue to kind of hold that flame and be patient with it. The way that I even approach it within my own business, I have employees that turn over and leave for other jobs. And I mentioned it earlier. The thing I always say is, if turnover is just, part of our business, we know that. I want every single one of my employees to leave better than they arrived. So having leadership opportunities for them is really important. I like to put my employees into situations that they don't even themselves think that they can handle. So, we talk about personal growth, right? So having personal growth opportunities for everybody in your business, having pathways for everybody in your business. There was this amazing study that came out from Ernst & Young, and we can even link it somewhere. It's an incredible study about the hospitality industry. And they interviewed, I think it was 14,000 millennials and Gen Zs about what was important to them. And management was not important to them. They didn't want to become, CEOs or managers or owners or anything, but they wanted to feel that they had a pathway to leadership. And what does that pathway look like? Money was also not the number one thing that was important to them. Belonging and feeling like they're part of a solution is really important. So adopting a culture of personal development for everybody. And I know it's hard, and I even struggle with it with my own business, but it's the key to longevity is giving people the feeling of being invested in, and, giving them, I know this incredible operator that shuts his restaurant down once a year, and he gets the back of house to serve and the front of house to cook.
Oh my God.
And they play restaurant, but they switch roles. And, those kind of experiences build empathy, understanding, compassion, camaraderie amongst the teams. And yes, it's expensive to do. It costs a whole day. But I can tell you that the benefit far outweighs the cost and expense of doing that for your team.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. I never heard of that, but that's clever because it's, we all see our story through our own eyes. It's normal. It's human behavior. So it's, as a server, it's like, you don't know what it's like, when a customer is yelling at you, and then, in the kitchen, you're like, you don't know what it's like when you give me a ticket and then change the ticket. But so that's a really cool one. I never heard of that. That's a great one. Really cool. As we slowly come to an end, one of the last questions I have for you is the future of Knowbie. Where are you guys at? Let's say today, it sounds like you have a working app. People are using it, training up their staff, increasing sales. But what's next? Is there evolution coming with Knowbie? What's like on your horizon? Anything you can share, basically.
Yeah, I think two things, just been my theme, two things. Yeah. Two things are, one, we've developed Knowbie to be compatible for other companies' learning systems. So let's say, you're a company that has 10 to 15 locations or however many locations, but you already have your own system.
Right.
Yeah. So we've taken our, award-winning content and our whole learning style and created it so you can plug it in. So again, I understand how long it takes to build this kind of comprehensive training and how much it costs and how much it is to maintain it. It is a feat, and lots of restaurants and businesses want to do it for themselves. This is a plug and play solution, turnkey. You literally plug it into your system and it's yours. So we've just recently launched that, which is really exciting for us and opens up other opportunities to work with bigger enterprises.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is building more community around Knowbie. So doing more to keep them engaged, monetizing, prizes, things like that. We have right now we have a trip to Australia. Oh. So we've got a module inside of Knowbie. We partnered with Barossa, Australia, and it's free to anybody to access, and they can download the app, go and do it, and enter into the contest. And we have a trip for two to Barossa, Australia, where they host you. You go for 5 days, download the app and do it and enter in. It's pretty awesome. But doing more of those things and bringing more reward and recognition to the front line, because it's difficult to stay on top of it as an operator. And one of my kind of driving and principles has been to elevate the front line. So as I mentioned at the top of the call, this industry has given me opportunities that no other industry did. Yeah. And I believe in it so fully because I think it contributes to economic mobility, and it gives, single moms and immigrants and all of these people a leg up, and they can really become anyone that they want to. And so I believe in elevating that and elevating the people in the industry. So doing more for them and bringing them more together as a community is really the future of where we're going to go. That's awesome. I love that. Last but not least, I want people to be able to find you and find Knowbie. So before we wrap up, we're going to put it in the links, but for people listening, where can they find Crystal? Where can they find Get Knowbie? LinkedIn, websites, whatever. Feel free to search chance to just plug away. Yeah, thanks, Angelo. So you can find us on all the social media platforms at Get Knowbie, so GETKNOWBIE. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and then our website is getknowbie.com. So you can reach out to us there, and you can reach out to me directly anytime.
Awesome. So for people listening, especially if you have a reasonable beverage program, you heard it here. If you want to increase sales, is a great way to do it. Pretty low risk too. So get Knowbie.com. That's KNOWBIE. So thank you, Crystal, for joining us. This is great. I appreciate you having on the episode, and we'll catch you in the future for an update.
Awesome. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you, everyone.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.